Now, we begin with a big political stunner. Tulsi Gabbard, who ran as a Democratic presidential candidate during the last election cycle, now says she is leaving the Democratic Party altogether in a fiery takedown ahead of the midterms. And she's urging independent-minded Democrats to do the same. The former Hawaii Congresswoman announced her departure in a series of tweets and a video posted this morning. Watch.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
Oh, Raymond, that's pretty powerful. And what stuck out to me, which I think encapsulates so much of what she said, was what we heard a moment ago. I believe in a government that is of, by, and for the people, but unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not.
Well, you know, when I heard that, I thought of Ronald Reagan, Elon Musk, from time gone by and now. The party didn't leave them, or rather, they didn't leave the party left them. It changed, it warped, it became something they no longer recognized. And in the case of Tulsi Gabbard, I have to tell you, it breaks my heart that we don't have a fully functional Democratic Party today. You know, in my state of Louisiana, that may be the last holdout in the Democratic Party where you can still have a pro-life, pro-gun governor who happens to have a D after his name. That's a fully functioning party that welcomes other viewpoints, allows normalcy and the middle to come home. This party, the National Party, no longer welcomes that. And the fact that they couldn't make room for a veteran, an articulate woman of conscience who has called them, this is a woman who supported, by the way, Bernie Sanders. So she's hardly some right-winger who was embedded in the Democratic Party. When Tulsi Gabbard leaves, it's a big sign for the Democratic Party. We'll see if they heed it or not.
That's right. And, you know, she's joined a wave, Mercedes, and a lot of articulation there to Raymond's points is it has less to do with the Republican Party that we are joining and more the Democratic Party, which has left us behind because we care about kitchen table issues, like putting food on the table and inflation and the value of our paycheck and having civil liberties and a secure southern border and every other thing that makes us feel safe and secure as Americans that the Democratic Party seems not to represent.
Right. And, you know, Tulsi Gabbard came to speak at CPAC, and at the time, for example, it was controversial. Democrats criticized her. Republicans criticized my husband for inviting her. But she wanted to find common ground. That was her big thing. And it was about common sense solutions. It was about stopping cancel culture. But at the same time, what we've realized is her willingness to speak out boldly and stand against this radical agenda, this wokeness. This is waking up so many segments of our population, including the Hispanic population, that now you're seeing more and more shift away from the Democrat Party, move towards the Republican Party. Why? They are pro-family, pro-America, and pro-life.
That's right, Harris. As someone quoted that left the Democrat Party, just one of the waves, says, you know, in the past I voted Democrat, but they've become the party of division and hate, so I can no longer support them.
I think what Raymond said is so important, though. When you can't make room for voices that are not just an echo chamber, and they have served this country, and they are serving in Congress. I mean, this is not a person who just woke up one morning and said, I don't want to be a Democrat anymore. Yeah. She's run. Yeah. People have voted for her. She believed in what she was doing. And when you talk to former Congresswoman Gabbard, one of the things that she'll say, and I interviewed her many, many times, we've had her on the program, one of the things that she'll say is how much she loves this country. And I just wonder, is that a non-starter just in terms of where the Democrat Party is going? That they want to soften so many things about where we are. Police, making victims of the criminals themselves. But the military's readiness is something that she really feels strongly about. We all should. And by the way, very quietly this summer, and maybe we wouldn't know this if Kanye West hadn't called it DEFCON 3. It's not, it's DEFCON, and that's for another day to talk about that craziness. But did you know that we're at DEFCON 3 right now?
Yes.
That it was raised.
Yeah.
And they updated that earlier this month to let people know on a much broader scale. I mean, you want people like that fighting for this country, whether she's still in uniform, which, by the way, she's still reserve in Hawaii, wherever she is. And the fact that the Democrat Party didn't have a use for that at a time when this Democrat president administration has put us in a category where our Air Force has to be ready in 15 minutes now. And they say it's Ukraine and Russia and so on and so forth. I think that deserves a fireside chat. We ought to be hearing from Democrats on that.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's so interesting, too, how, for a party that claims to be all about the youth, and it seems like so many of their decisions, to utilize Hollywood celebs and TikTok videos seem geared toward wooing those voters, they've lost them in the area of censorship. And I know that we're going to get into that a little bit later in the show, but I wanted to get your thoughts on that, Kaylee, and also one of strategy. Because for all of these people, these important elected officials and people of import in the Democratic Party who are leaving, strategically, would it be better for them to stay and then just vote and sort of help whip their party into that more moderate, common sense ground? Or by leaving altogether, is it abandoning that ship to become even more rotten, even more swampy than it already is?
Abandoning the ship, because this Democrat Party apparatus is totally and completely corrupt. Look, you have a party that defund the police, abolish ICE, kindergarten should learn about sex, oppressed and oppressors is how our kids should be interacting with one another, cancel culture. This is the Democrat Party. But I think two things are going on here. One, the radical shift in the left. But number two, you've got to take yourself back to 2016. And this is really when Tulsi Gabbard came on the scene. There's Bernie Sanders, there's Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard went to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who's the head of the DNC, and said, I think you are rigging this primary against Bernie Sanders and against this wing of the party for then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who, by the way, said Tulsi Gabbard was being groomed as a Russia asset. She really loves that Russia thing. But you've got to take yourself back to that, because there was a reckoning with both parties in 2016 where the establishment was rejected. And you could see it in every poll that CNN conducted, Republican, Democrat, no matter the state, there were record high levels of discontent with the federal government. People did not like the establishment. Republican Party chose to listen to the voters. Who's the head of the Republican Party now? If you look at any poll, it would tell you Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Vice President Pence, all of whom support the same agenda, which is in tune with the party, in tune with the people. Democrats, Schumer, Pelosi, I mean, Biden, Clinton, you've got an establishment party and you've got one that listens to voters. And Democrats chose to not listen to their voters. Yeah, AOC, that's right.
Yeah, depending on the day.
Well, this is why you have 1 million voters changing their registration away from Democrat in that recent AP report. I mean, in 43 states, when you have that kind of hemorrhaging of support, but that's a challenge for the Republicans.
I was just going to say that.
Those people are leaving because of what's happening in the Democratic Party, not what's happening in the Republican.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that they're making a shift there because they see something else that they want. So this is a real opportunity, Mercedes, for Republicans. And where they don't want to drop the ball is they have to get those people to vote. Like, okay, so you're upset with that side, but we got to make sure that you stay in the voting game.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on that for coming up with the midterms, because now with these tiny, slim majorities where 10,000 votes, 5,000, even 2,000 could make a difference, how do you see this playing out as we enter now, 30 days?
Look, I don't think
28.
28. Counting.
No one's counting.
Look, Republicans cannot take this for granted. They can't take these voters for granted. They can't assume that they're just simply going to come to the Republican side and stay in the Republican side. You got to make a home for them. You got to say your voice is important to us. We want you to stay with us. That party has abandoned you, because at the end of the day, it's going to be the swing voters. It's going to be the independents that don't want to be associated with either party, and it will be the parents. Those are the major swing voters that you're going to see in so many of these midterm elections.
No doubt.
That's right. All right, coming up. Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.